Hello, Mark here. Monday musings as usual. This is a week that seems to have been entirely swallowed by doing the video of my kind of wood and resin topped short scale base, my second base that I made. Unlike the first base project that I had, I actually took a lot of photos when I was making this. So I had I think about 70 of them after I eventually tracked all of them down, which took a fair bit of time itself because, you know, I had different ones stored in different places. It made it an interesting one to film. I've done all of the filming. I've still got some editing and putting it out to do because that's it's one that I was trying to get done last week, you know, in terms of actually having it finished and out. I've done everything, including a bit of a sound test. I still need to film myself just sort of playing a song with it, but I always put that out as a separate video anyway. The bit that's kind of been kind of so time swallowing with this one is that partly it was a project where I did quite a lot of things for the first time, and that's worth talking about and sharing my experiences of. But the other thing is that I needed to coordinate quite a lot of things. I had a fairly substantial set of notes. I needed to have like a laptop there in my eye line so that I could actually talk about what the different images were at the different stages of the project, and just the whole thing really was a bit more fiddly than I was expecting, to be honest. I think doing project 3 and project 4 are going to be a lot easier than that one. I think it is going to be the most difficult one to actually share everything that people might find useful without waffling too much. I may fail with that one. You may find me waffly, so kind of apologies there. It was a really exciting project to do that one. Anyway, so quite a lot of the week has been spent on the video here of this base, rather than actually of building. Most of the building stuff I've done actually has been planning bits, really. One of the things that I really need to do, I talked about actually moving towards producing my own pickups and actually winding my own pickups. Excitingly, some of the bits have turned up for that, which is why I've got a large coil of copper wire sitting here and a cardboard box with a pickup winder in it. But to make that something that I can produce things which produce the tones that I want to produce and actually go with the projects that I'm wanting to produce, I needed, and I mentioned this last week, a test bed. And I ran into an unexpected issue with that. I basically looked for the cheapest kind of guitar body that I could find that I was going to bung a neck on, route out a big chunk of the middle so that I could experiment with where I was positioning pickups, you know, and put fairly standard wiring in. And I got this for, it was about £25. Now the problem that I've got is that I actually quite like this body, Telecaster shape fairly obviously, but it's actually reasonably nicely finished. The top's a veneer, but it's a reasonably nice veneer, you know, and looks fairly standard thickness. It's kind of quite nicely figured. I kind of like it, and actually the idea of just using this, ripping it up as a kind of test bed, kind of didn't feel right, so I've ordered myself another plain wood on this occasion body to use as a test bed, and I'm gonna turn this into either a Telecaster base or I might actually make a Telecaster. I've been meaning for ages to actually have another go at a bit of learning with a 6-string guitar. People still keep talking to me about chords and stuff that I don't understand as a bass player, so I just think a little bit of skill there might be useful in terms of developing my bass playing, so I may turn it into that. And I enjoyed this enough that at 25 quid I ordered another one as well, so I may well do both of those things, or I might do something more baritone, or there's all sorts of stuff that I might do with this. So yeah, the bit that kind of gets interesting there though was that I was looking at that today, and actually the listing for this on the site that I bought it now lists it as mahogany, which actually looks right looking at it. When I've actually routed a couple of bits, I'll have a clearer idea of that. And actually the price of these now is a heck of a lot more than I paid for them. So I don't know if they just mislabeled them or something, but actually that makes me feel more that I'm right in thinking actually this has got a bit more potential than just something that's purely going to be used as a test bed for kind of testing pickups and location. On the subject of pickups, and having talked about the winder and stuff, it's going to take me a while to produce stuff that I really like. So actually for the couple of projects that are ongoing at the moment, I'm expecting to use bought pickups in those. But that does lead to some interesting questions in terms of what I'm doing with them. These are the pickups, or one of the pickups, I think this one's bridge, for the headless 5-string bass that I'm producing. This type with the large pole pieces I think is quite interesting to experiment with. As far as equipment goes, this morning I finally got through a Gauss meter to actually measure magnetic strength, you know, and those sorts of things. And I think putting that together with the ability to measure inductance as well as resistance and what have you is going to be really interesting. But certainly on paper, this looks like this is going to sound right for what I want to do. And the other thing is that because, as you saw I did just then, it'll pop out of its housing, it allows me, without needing to wind my own pickups, to actually start experimenting a little bit with what I then do in terms of housing that. This is part of the body for that project that I kind of obviously cut off when I was actually cutting the body shape. Apologies, I was testing a bit of a wood stain on a couple of points on this. But actually using this to cut I was going to say holders, I'm sure there's a more technical term, the bit that holds the pickup basically, and actually having that match to the body of the guitar, I think I mentioned before, is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing. I quite like the idea though, given that this is a fairly standard jazz bass format, that if someone did want later to upgrade this, that actually they could use a fairly standard 5-string jazz bass pickup and actually put that again into the kind of piece that holds that on the guitar. So yeah, lots of kind of fiddling around with that to do before I know exactly what I'm doing with it, but interesting stuff there, interesting stuff. I've mentioned pickups so much, I must put together a video of just like kind of pickups 101 at some point. But I have to say, I'm wanting to spend a bit more time getting my hands actually on the wood of the guitar and actually making it rather than just talking about it. And it's twisted a little bit in that direction more recently. Oh, one other thing that's a little different that I'll put out probably a short video on. I got round on the subject of Telecasters, actually, because I used a Telecaster pickguard for this. I got round to actually experimenting with engraving, laser engraving a pickguard. I'm just going to grab that. So, as a first attempt, I was really quite happy with this. I think I mentioned before that actually this kind of the idea of this came from having just laser engraved anodized aluminium business cards for something else that I'm kind of involved in, and actually looking at how easy that went. This, I'll just hold that up there. With anodized aluminium, particularly a dark coloured one like that, it burns through really easily, the anodizing, and leaves, I mean, it's more white than silver actually, but it leaves this, you know, really kind of quite strong, distinct patterning on. So I put together a pattern that I thought would fit with that, and obviously what we have here is the control cover, which again kind of, you know, kind of is fitted in as part of that design. But as a first attempt, I'm well happy with that. It didn't turn out perfectly, and as I say, I think it'll be interesting talking about what it did and didn't work with that. But yeah, as I say, when I get around to doing that, I've sort of filmed a couple of clips of it whilst I was doing it, and I think that will be potentially another interesting one. So that's where we are. It's mostly been fiddling around with pickup stuff and videoing in the last week, rather than I need to get my hands on wood again this week. On the subject of wood, right here behind me, they were kind of in the background last Monday when I was talking about stuff. This is likely to be project, where are we? Project 7 and Project 8, unless that one becomes Project 7 and these become 8 and 9. But I just wanted to give people an idea of actually why I've got large chunks of wood sitting in the background. This black limber is just beautifully figured, and I'm planning on making my kind of, what's kind of the shape that I've used for the last couple. Here I'm working, I mean, the white outline isn't the one that I did. I'm kind of working on something that's a bit closer to... a bit closer, I guess, to something like a Mustang, kind of body shape. I've got a few ideas there. I've got some bits on there. But this is an absolutely beautiful piece of burl walnut. I'll just hold that up. If you can see some of the figuring in that, once that is finished and oiled, that's going to look stunning. And I love all of the little channels into it because it gives me a chance... gives me a chance to play with resin again. I think that with a really kind of strong contrasting colour coming out in those areas actually will look really stunning. So yeah, that's why I have chunks of wood sitting in the background. Something that I found myself mentioning a couple of times, you see, is that I quite like putting things where I can see them and kind of absorbing that over time. I've done that a lot with body designs and those sorts of things. I did it with the engraving on Project 6. There's a whole range of stuff there that I think it's quite useful to just see how you react to it when you just run into it a few times a day, and actually if that looks good. So anyway, that's where we're at. Monday Musings episode 3 is done. I hope you're having a good time and see you soon. Bye.